host, Mari Reesberg. Over the past several years, I've combined my degrees in acting and somatic psychology to share my sustaining creativity techniques with performers. And now I've decided to share it with a bigger audience that includes you. I believe we are all creative, and this podcast is all about that. I'll be interviewing people from all backgrounds, ages, and creativity experiences to share just how creative we all are. Today, I'll be chatting with Kevin Gazzara, teacher, professor, coach, and business consultant. Please enjoy Kevin Gazzara. Welcome to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. Today, I'm here with Kevin Gazzara. Kevin is a professor, a coach, a business consultant, and helps managers become leaders. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Mara. It's so nice to be here and sharing me with your listeners.
Thank you so much for joining me for our conversation on creativity and how it shows up in your life and what it means to you. But before we get into that part of our chat, why don't you just take a couple of minutes and let the listeners know a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Well, I think you've kind of summarized kind of what I do. I'm a coach. I've been a professor at 6 different universities. I teach management, leadership, business development, marketing, strategy, problem solving, critical thinking, those types of things. I spent 30 years in the corporate world. I worked for a company called Transamerica de Laval for 10 as a product manager, a general manager. But I spent my last corporate life, the last 17 years of my corporate life at Intel. And I did the technical stuff. You know, my undergrad is in engineering and business. I did my MBA, and then I went off and did all my doctoral work in organizational leadership, which is my passion. But I started with Intel on the technical side. And then ultimately, my last 10 years there, I managed Intel University and the management leadership development, the residential programs for the world for Intel. And we used to do 2,500 managers and leaders in 10 different countries. And my personal goal was to retire at 50, which I was able to do. I took 2 of my colleagues and we started up a consulting firm called Magna Leadership Solutions. And we've been in business 17 years. Every year has been better than the last. And my personal goal was I really wanted to be able to work with small to medium-sized companies who didn't have $10 million budgets, like the big companies have, to really help develop their leaders and help them build their teams and build their businesses. And that's what we've been able to do. So life has been excellent, and you know, I get to do what I love to do and help people every day. So every day is an adventure.
That's amazing. Oh my goodness. And what a trajectory. And I mean, having your hands in so many different areas and the amount of creativity that I'm sure it is asked of you in whether it's on the technical side or on the leadership side or the teaching side. And I'm so excited to learn more and to chat with you about it.
Well, I've always had kind of what my wife would tell you is a conflicted brain. That, you know, I have this creative side and I have the technical side. So I like the numbers, the bits and the bytes, and all the techie stuff. But I also love the creativity piece. I'm a musician. I'm a drummer. I've played for over 40 years. I've taught drums.
Love it.
It's, you know, so that keeps my creative side happy, you know, and then this other stuff keeps the kind of the technical and the creative side happy as well. But, you know, growing up in Levittown, Pennsylvania, I went to school right outside of Philadelphia. I had to make a choice. Do you go to engineering school or do you go to music school? And I chose the engineering school for lots of reasons. But I continued, I used all the different bands and the teaching to kind of work my way through college. So,
nice.
So it was a really nice balance. You know, many people will call me a portfolio worker. I have lots and lots of different irons in the fire. Keeps things interesting.
Absolutely. And you strike me as someone who likes it that way.
I
Likes.
do. I do like it that way.
Well, I'm so curious with the varied life that you've had and the things that you've done, what does it mean to you to be creative?
Well, I think the big thing is it's allowing yourself to find that flow, to get into the concept of flow. If the listeners understand what flow is returned as kind of getting in the zone, right?
Mhm.
So if you can get in the zone, that's really where the guy who wrote the book on flow, a guy by the name of Dr. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, who
Yeah.
I was so fortunate not to be, he was on my committee. And when I did my dissertation, I got to work with him because I wanted to see if I could extend his theory on how do you get people in the zone so that magic creativity happens. And I was fortunate that I was able to do that.
That's
And
amazing.
it was a great experience. I ended up developing an assessment tool that helps people understand um, their balance of task types. We all have
Hmm.
three different tasks that we do. We
Hmm.
have routine tasks, we have troubleshooting, and there's project tasks. And if you look at an individual, each one of us has one of 496 different mixtures.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
and what I found was, what I proved through all the doctoral research was that if I can identify the ideal mixture for you, um, and I can place you in that situation where you get the right percentage on a regular basis, a daily or weekly, monthly basis, that I can raise your level of job satisfaction, motivation, engagement. And then we actually extended the theory through another doctoral student that did her dissertation and my dissertation. We extended that and realized that it actually creates a higher sense of empowerment as well. So back to your original question is how do you get this creativity happen? One of the first things is you need to place yourself in an environment where you're getting this right mixture of tasks, because
Mm.
what happens is it allows you to get into that concept of flow
Mhm.
more often. And if you can do that, life is good. But the tendency is, particularly there's a lot of people that have jobs that are very, very structured. If you're a line worker on in a manufacturing facility,
Yeah.
you don't have a whole lot of variability of what you can do.
Sure.
But many of the other office workers have that ability to really craft, do a little more project work, jump in and help people solve some problems, doing some routine work and finding that right balance, the right cadence of
Mm.
those tasks. Once you know that, and you can structure your day, you're probably still going to be exhausted at the end of the day. The difference is you're going to want to come back and do more of it.
I love that. And what an awesome idea to extend that flow and to, I mean, so by finding this in my head, I'm thinking this magical collection of combinations that work specifically for you, how that really does extend your experience of flow. And is it another way to like getting into that flow state more quickly? Because I know a lot of creative people are always looking for that.
Yeah, well, if you want to find out about, there's 8 different elements that allow you to get into flow. Uh, what we have found is this task balance, or what I call the task quotient, the TQ, like IQ and EQ.
Mhm.
What we found is that if you can do that, because your level of engagement, your level of motivation, your level of job satisfaction, your level of empowerment, all of those are significantly pumped up. What that does is it allows you to look at things a little bit different
Hmm.
and be able to get into flow. It doesn't guarantee if you just balance your tasks that you'll get into
Sure.
flow, but it really sets you up in a way that you can be very successful, so that getting into flow is significantly easier.
Okay. So for your experience of getting into flow, having done all the research and the studies, are you able to get into that flow state yourself in like maybe a faster way because you've had such an extended time to practice and participate in it?
Absolutely. I think for people who want to get into flow, the first thing is you have to be able to, it's like, if anyone's read Stephen Covey's work, they said Stephen Covey from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Covey said, sometimes it's difficult to remember you're there to drain the swamp is what you really want to do when you're up to your ass in alligators. And the tendency for people is that they don't get rid of the alligators, and they want to get into flow and they want to get creative and so forth. But there's all this other stuff that's nipping at them. And you have to take care of the stuff that's a distraction, stuff that's not kind of feeding your creative side, the things that motivate you. And it's really easy to figure out if you're given an option to go do what you've just done, would you take that option? And if the answer is absolutely not, then you need to figure out a way to, delegate that or delete it or go do something different. And if you can do that, you have a much better way of getting in the flow. I can say I get in the flow, on a regular basis. And I think the easiest way to tell whether you're in flow or not is when that sense of time is severely distorted and you look up at the clock and you swear it's 9 o'clock and it's midnight. And you think that, well, the clock is wrong. That's flow. That's the easiest way to figure out whether you're in flow or not, where time is just completely distorted. And the more you can do that, it doesn't guarantee productivity, but what it does do, from what Csikszentmihalyi had found was that it does guarantee that you're going to get more creative, right? Because that's where the creativity is going to come out of. It's when you're in that zone and everything else is blocked out.
Nice. Oh, this is so fantastic. I look forward to experiencing this for myself to find out what the task combination is for me. And I'm so curious, in your experience and in your life, I imagine you come up against challenges of the creative type and creative kind. How do you yourself face those more creative challenges?
Well, I think one of the first things we teach in our Leading Forward Academy, which is a 6-month program on leadership, is that you really need to look at everything as an opportunity rather than as a threat. That's people can only, any time you're in something, there are those two options. There's really no middle ground. There's no middle ground on you're either on one side of the fence or the other. And, by maintaining that positive outlook and kind of looking for the gift and looking for the opportunity, that's really where it encourages the getting into flow and encourages being creative. People that are more cynical, it's okay to be skeptical because you always want to be questioning things. People are more cynical, like this will never work, and I've tried that before, and so forth. The ability when you take that mindset, which is not a growth mindset, it's a fixed mindset. When you take that, the ability to get into that zone and to be creative is severely restricted, if not completely eliminated. So, yeah, so you have to be able to change the mindset, which is not an easy task. If you do a lot of the research, what you'll find is that, it's about 50-50. 50% of it comes from nature, what you're born with. I'm sure you remember as a kid, there were the kids in the playground that were always upbeat and so forth, and there are other kids that were not. So that has a lot to do with kind of nature. And then nurture is the other piece, with regard to the family environment and social structures and so forth. So those of us, and I would say I was one of the ones that was born with the rose, glass is always half full. So I could build on that, to get my score closer to 100. Starting at a 50 point is a whole lot easier. And I found that working with executives and coaching managers and so forth, usually the people that have been successful are the ones, not all, but
Mhm.
are the ones that have started out with more of the 50 on the positive of way. I
Mhm.
have run into many executives that didn't start that way, but they recognized it, and they
Mm.
recognized that a change was needed, and they did the hard work on themselves.
Yeah.
And if you can do that, and you can really develop yourself kind of as a brand, and truly know yourself, then you've got the ability to make that leap forward. But it's a lot of work. There's a great book to get everybody started. It's called Positive Intelligence. If the listeners haven't read that or listened to that,
Mhm.
that's probably the best way in the world to start. I've been
Nice.
a positive intelligence facilitator for the last 3 years, big proponent of it. It's based around a foundation of emotional intelligence.
Mhm.
And if you can build your EQ and your PQ, then you have that chance of transitioning from, glass half empty to glass half full.
I love it. Thank you for the book recommendation and just how important mindset is when we're working through difficult situations and challenges, and how challenging changing your mindset can
Oh,
be in that moment.
it is. And once again, and if you have too many alligators in the swamp that you haven't gotten rid of all of the distractions, the negative people, the people that are telling you can't do that, or not there to build you up,
Yeah.
then sometimes it becomes almost insurmountable. So you have to
Mhm.
pay attention to those things that are a distraction and are not contributory to your growth,
Yeah.
and recreate the environment as quickly as you can.
Nice. Yeah, great tips. I'm so curious, this being kind of your adult life, in your younger life and maybe even childhood, what's your earliest memory of being creative yourself?
Well, I'd say it's probably could be as early as, 5 or 6. I was always, first of all, I had an awesome childhood. I had the typical, not the typical, I had the perfect childhood. I had two parents that are married for 50 years. The sister, the dog, the station wagon, lived in a
Mhm.
homogeneous community. Dad went off to work, mom stayed home and helped out with the kids. And so that was if you look at a lot of the shows in the 60s, that's kind of the life
Mhm.
I was born with. But the thing that I think helped me so much with the creativity pieces, I was always fascinated by everything, particularly anything mechanical or electrical.
Mm.
I pretty much would take everything apart in the house, and my parents would encourage it, and every time I would put things back together, there's always a few screws or bolts or connectors that were somehow
Left over.
didn't make it back into the radio or the television or the bicycles or the engines or what I was tinkering with. And
Mhm.
so I always remember, I used to I had friends on the street and in the neighborhood, but
Mhm.
a good portion of my time was spent kind of on my own, creating and building, and
Mhm.
new projects would build bikes and wagons and radios and those kind of things.
Nice.
So real early on,
Mhm.
tinker toys and erector sets and so forth, anything I could get my hands on with a wrench or a tool or screwdriver or something, just allowed me to figure out how it works. And I remember my dad telling me, who was, I'd say, my mentor, said to me, he said, as a kid, the thing that I constantly would ask him was, how it works, Dad, how it works, right? Because I just didn't want to know what it did, but I wanted to know kind of how it did it and why it did it.
Yeah, I love that curiosity. And I'm so curious myself, in childhood, having the curiosity of asking how it works or why it does what it does and the tinkering, how does that show up in your adult life today?
Well, I think, it shows up, in completely in both of my personal and professional lives. And it
Mhm.
has been so for the last 30, 40 years, is it shows up because I have learned to think critically and not take things at face value. And when
Mm.
somebody says, oh, you can't do that, or that won't work, or this is the position that they're coming from, you know, of and particularly in today's world, which is incredibly politically divided, and you know, there's lots and lots of different cultures that we have to deal with, where people are segmenting or segregating themselves. What it's allowed me to do is to really ask the right questions to get a deeper, not only a deeper understanding for me of why certain decisions are being made or why certain approaches, but my goal as a coach and a consultant is really to help them understand how they're making decisions. And what I found, particularly where people are making, let's call it less than optimal decisions, or really bringing in all of this bias, that if I can get them to really have an open, honest conversation to talk about where that has come from,
Yeah.
98% of the time, it's all based on fallacies. It's based on things that they've believed, but they've never proved. They don't have any facts to support it. They might say it's a gut feel, and just getting them to recognize that they've built an entire approach on something or a belief in something, for something that they have never really questions of the why and the foundation, and getting them to think through that quite often can help them at least be open to other ideas. May not change their mind, but
Sure.
they may realize of like, oh, you know, this is not as solid as I thought. Maybe some of the other perspectives do have some degree of merit.
That makes so much sense. I love seeing those connections between childhood and adulthood, and how they show up and how they were cultivated, and how you continue to cultivate that in your own life and experience. I mean, you strike me as someone who asks a lot of questions and is inspired by many things, but in your life today, who or what is inspiring you?
Well, so as a musician, I'm always inspired by people that have, or any type of art, people that have been given incredible talent, right? I mean, I think there's talent and skill.
Yeah.
I think all of us have some talents. Some of those may be undiscovered, but I've been fortunate enough to have, in a previous life, being able to do video production and work with a lot of incredibly famous musicians, and I still am good friends with those today. And seeing what true talent is, and then where they build upon it to not to build that as the foundation, and then expand their skill, and be able to do it at you know, this kind of significant difference, a difference in level.
Yeah.
It's always amazing to me to be able to see a musician, you know, any type of music, any type of instrument, be able to see where there's a degree of mastery that's way beyond what I could ever believe I could achieve, no matter how much work I put into it, is always just is always inspiring to me.
Nice. Yeah, I agree. Watching someone in their element doing what brings them joy and what they love to do is very inspiring. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Now, with the people you work with, I mean, it sounds like you have worked with so many people individually and groups all at the same time. I'm wondering, when you come across people who may not think of themselves as creative or have more of that pessimistic viewpoint, how would you encourage others to find creativity in their life?
Well, I think the first thing is they need to figure out, ask them what they love to do, right? And then that would be my first question. Tell me what are the things that you love to do? And then the second question is how much time are you able to dedicate to do that? And usually the answer is I love to do this, and because I have to, get a salary and take care of the family and the kids and all the other stuff. A lot of that, the things that they love to do, is pushed off, and I'll do that in retirement. And the
Right.
problem is by the time you get to retirement, maybe some of the things you love to do is like playing football or sports or something.
Yeah.
Your body isn't set up for that, or your brain isn't as sharp for whatever it is.
Hmm.
So I would say is you really need to have a place in your life on a regular daily, if not daily, at least weekly
Hmm.
basis, where you're off doing some of that to try to keep that creativity alive. The
Hmm.
other thing I find is that each activity that you love to do really feeds the ability and the outlook for other activities.
Mm.
And quite often, if you are kind of stuck in this rut, um, it's not instantaneously, well, I'm just going to stop doing that. I'm going to go play guitar for, 4 hours a day.
Mhm.
You can't do that. But it's the small steps that you can just take. You can
Mhm.
say to yourself, can I do it for 5 minutes a day, and
Yeah.
then 6 minutes the next day, something really, really small. I think the tendency is for all of us to take the steps that are too large, right? Okay, so I'm
Hmm.
gonna, starting on, January 1st, I'm gonna block out 2 hours a day, and this is what we're gonna do.
Right.
I'm gonna be touring the world by the end of the year. You have to be realistic. And if you set the initial goals too high,
Hmm.
typically you get discouraged, and then you abandon it, and it's the reason
Yeah.
that New Year's resolutions really don't stick.
Right. Yeah. No, I love those. That reminder of manageable, achievable that you can really participate in and be successful at in completing. Because I think oftentimes we do have those big dreams, big ideas, and we're encouraged to have them.
Mhm.
And what is actually manageable in the time that we have available.
Yeah, I think you have to. In fact, I wrote an article. I'm sure people can find if you just Googled it, on being optimistic, pessimistic, and realistic. You know,
Yeah.
and I am very much kind of a realistic plus person.
Uh-huh.
I would certainly say I'm an optimist. The difference is being a realistic optimist. I think keeps you moving forward, and it's that small incremental change that over time really becomes a radical change.
Yeah, I love it. Oh my gosh, this has been such a wonderful chat. I just have one last question.
Sure.
What does it feel like in your body to be creative?
Well, the hair stands up on the back of my neck. I kind of feel chills, the physical sensation. I know that when I'm being creative, that, I'm usually completely exhausted and drained, mentally and quite often physically. And I want to come back and do it again, right? That's the difference between, work, right, which is where you're
Yeah,
just kind of cranking it out and
right.
you're exhausted, and then well, I got to do it again tomorrow, and you're dreading that. And I think that's the biggest difference. But I get this kind of sensation on the back of my neck, and I once again the sense of time just
Yeah,
is gone, right? So that's me being in flow.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you for sharing all of the pieces. And I can't wait to learn more about the assessment that you've created. And if people want to learn more about what you do and where you do it, how could they go about doing that?
Sure. Well, first of all, I encourage anybody that's listening, it's my greatest gift is to be able to help others.
Mm.
So if you have a question on management, on leadership, on coaching, on personal development, career development, moving from the corporate world into how do you become an entrepreneur, how do you make that change? I love to talk to people about that. They can reach me, if they send a message to Kevin at Magna Leadership. That's my company, Magna leadership.com. You can reach me there. You can also, I have a website that talks about all the leadership programs and so forth that we do at magnaleadership.com. I've also just released about 2 weeks ago, released my coaching site, which is coachsultants.com. Coach Sultans, SULTANTS, coachsultants.com, and it's really my philosophy. A lot of executives in particular hire a coach, and what they really need is they need a coach or a consultant or some combination of both. And our programs, the programs that I deliver, kind of work with that. In fact, being a big fan of assessments, there's a free assessment on there, and you can figure out if you really do need a coach or consultant. You can answer the 24 questions and you get your report instantaneously and that's free as well, right on the site. So you can reach me any one of those ways.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. I will put those in show notes, those links, so people have easy access. And thank you again for everything you've shared with us and taking the time to talk with me. And yeah.
One more thing. If you want to take that free assessment, which I've created for you, anyone can listen to this and they can figure out what their ideal task mixture is. Only take you about 5 minutes to do it. Go to magnaleader.co, not com.
.co. Okay.
Right. magnaleader.co / and then in all caps, gift, GIFT. So it's my gift to the listeners. Otherwise, you'd have to pay for it. And if it can help you kind of structure your day so you can get to that flow state, then I feel like I've contributed.
Wonderful. Right? Well, thank you for the gift. And I am definitely going to go and take it myself so I can find myself in flow more frequently. And thank you for putting everything together and for sharing everything and taking the time to talk with me. I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation.
It's been my pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. We'd love to keep in touch, so follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We are at Sustaining Creativity. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Tag your friends and family so they can listen too. We love to hear from you, so leave your reviews, comments, and questions. Check out our website, sustainingcreativity.com, for upcoming offerings and creativity coaching. Tune in Tuesdays for our next episode. And remember, with creativity, anything's possible.